All right, so we're going to continue on here. So if you follow through the alignments up to this point, so we have done everything from gun to stigmators. At this point now, we can do the corrector tuning, okay? I have done videos already on corrector tuning, but I'm going to do another one because, you can always learn new things, improve things. And there's probably some differences between now and when I did that video. Okay. So I'm just going to add another one in here and we're going to add it to the playlist, because it's in sequence with everything else here. Okay. So I'm going to open our column valves here. Okay. So in order to do the corrector tuning, they recommend that you use the cross grading with the gold palladium particles, but you could use really anything, like high contrast nanoparticles should work for this. I believe, although I haven't, tried it with anything else specifically, but it's so easy to get these cross grading samples. I don't know why you would want to, try it with anything else. But anyways, let's go ahead. Mono is going to have drifted because I haven't touched it in close to a day. And we also want the mono at positive 40 because that's what we typically do when we're running STEM mode. So we're going to put it at positive 40. And if I go to my apertures panel, okay, I've got the 50 in here. So the choice of the C2 aperture when you do the tuning, so I've done this at both using the 50 and the 70. When we first did the applications training with the Thermo Fisher people, they told us to use the 50 and to use a convergence semi-angle that was the default for the 50, which I think was around 18 millirad. With the 70, the default angle, I believe, is 25. And then we actually had some later apps training with the Thermo Fisher people, and they said that now they actually prefer to use a larger angle when they do the corrector tuning. I've had good results with both of these approaches. But the fact that the Thermo people now they choose to do this and this works, I would say do that as well. It kind of makes more sense, in a way, because when you're actually it would make sense that you want to do the tuning with conditions that are similar to what you're actually going to use when you image. Okay, you're probably going to use a convergence angle that's close to 25 millirad, maybe not quite that high, but close to it. So that would make sense that you'd want to do that as opposed to, something like 18 millirad. Okay. But again, my opinion is you can get, good results either way. We're going to have to do so we could set, eccentric height, but we're going to have to do a tweak to the height anyway, because we are, we're going to switch into nanoprobe mode, and right now we're in microprobe mode. But anyways, let's swap C2 apertures. So let me turn off the C3 lens. And we'll put in the 70. And now, if you were watching this video series, you may have noticed that my piezo stage couldn't activate it. So let's see if we can't knock that loose, because I really want to have that to help us focus with Z when we're in STEM. Okay, that looks reasonable. All right, turn that back on. Okay, so it's still saying we're disabled. I don't know why it's doing this. All right, so what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna disable and then re-enable the CompuStage, and we'll see if that works. Okay, CompuStage disabled. Really? A pain in the butt. All right. All right, so for whatever reason, I can't get this to work here, so I'm probably gonna have to call someone about this, unfortunately. But anyways, we'll soldier on without this, because you may not have a CompuStage. So if that's the case, um, you know, you won't be able to do this anyway. So I mean, truthfully, we don't need this. We should be okay without it anyway, but it's just a headache I'm gonna have to address here later. Okay, we got the mono centered, we got the C2 aperture put in that we want. So at this point, we can go ahead and go into STEM mode. All right. So now here's where we can tell it the convergence angle. So if you click the flap out arrow, MFY, you can increase this to 25. That's what they're recommending to use. And then we do have to actually verify the angle, okay? So there's a couple ways we can do this. So we can do it using the SATA camera if we have the camera calibrated in diffraction mode, we can do that. If you don't have that calibrated, then we can do it using the ring method. Okay, so which is the same method that I showed you when we did the condenser alignment. Let me push you centric focus there. Okay. So now here, this may actually be helpful to go. I'm going to go into vacuum here initially. Let me find the stage tab and let me update this. And let me go to vacuum because it's gonna be easier to see the probe in vacuum. Now as far as the current, we want something around 200 picoamps. So this is a little too low. So every time we decrease the spot number, we should double the current. So if we go, okay, yeah, so spot 6 is reasonable. Yeah, so I'd go with spot 6 here. All right, so let's turn off. We want the mag on the high side here. If we go to the acquisition window in Velox, very quickly we can start the scan and then center the beam. So just right click center beam. Okay, and then we want the mag high here, and then we can turn off diffraction to actually get an image of the probe. Okay, so now this is very important here when you're doing the tuning is, we're gonna do this through SCORR, is that these exported elements all need to be 0, okay? This is what's getting sent from the microscope to the corrector. So these all need to be zeroed out, and everything that we're tuning needs to be done through SCORR. Okay, I don't believe you have to be in the service GUI for this. I believe you can do this just in the normal account. Okay, all right. So we got to mag out, and we got to find the beam. Okay, so we have the detector in. So let's move that out. Okay. All right, so now this is not what we should be seeing here, okay? So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to adjust our C3 lens, okay? So if you go to alignments or find direct alignments, you can do intensity list focused, okay? And you can see we're adjusting C3. So what we need to see here is basically this, where we see a nice tight spot like that, okay? Now this isn't centered, so what I'm going to do is come back to here and go to state of correction. We want to have user beam shift, and we can center the beam. Okay, let me switch to natural. And let me check this one more time, see if I can't get this a little tighter. Yeah, so right about there. Okay. All right. And then we see that the spot is not quite centered in the halo here, so we can go to, this is now beam tilt. So let's do this here. Okay. And you can see that spot is not moving as I'm tilting the beam, which is important, okay? If your objective lens has been set properly, you should not see that move as you're tilting the beam, okay? Again, that has to be done at the service level, setting your objective lens here. This is not something that the normal user level has access to, unfortunately, okay? All right, so that looks good enough for now. If we were seeing, well, we'll correct A1 and B2 when we look at the ronchogram here, okay? But that centering is close enough. I mean, we can dial this in a little more, but this doesn't have to be. Is it doing anything? It says it is. Aren't you moving? Bit 3. Okay. All right. That's close enough. Okay. All right. So now we need to be over something. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to navigate back over to film. And I'm going to push the diffraction button. So we are now seeing the ronchogram. Do linear here. Okay. We can use diffraction alignments. So now real quickly here, okay, so let's just say for the sake of arguments that your exported elements here are not zeroed, okay? So actually these two you can zero out in with diffraction off. Okay, so actually here, let me turn it to diffraction. Okay, so this would be beam shift and beam tilt. You can activate these two and then you can zero them out here, okay? The rest of these you need to zero out in the stigmators panel, okay? So when you come here to stigmators, you'd have to click through condenser, probe A1, probe B2, and you'd have to, like if we did probe A1 here, see this is already zeroed, but you can right click and just click reset and that'll put it back to 0, okay? The other thing you can do too, if you have stem auto tuning, is you can come find that panel and just click reset and that will reset all of that. Didn't do anything because it was already reset. So, all right, let's turn diffraction back on. All right, so we can increase the camera length a couple clicks here to make this a little easier to see. Okay. And let's find direct alignments. And we want to make sure this is as accurately centered as possible because that's going to define our aperture position. So then we need to come back here, and now we're going to put in the 150. So we see more angular range here in the ronchogram. Okay, so now we need to focus with the Z. Okay, so we got to get this as close as we can get it here. Okay, so right about here's where the piezo state, but this is fine right here. Okay, all right. So now we need to. So clearly we've got some axial coma here or comma. So you can click stigmator probe B2. Now we're not going to actually use the multifunctions here. Okay, we're going to do this from in SCORR, but that turns on the pulsing here so we can actually see it. Okay, so click state of correction, and you want to use ATB2. I prefer to put this at bit 9 when I'm doing this. Okay, so up down tends to adjust the left to right swing, which yeah, it makes no sense. Um, okay, so right there, and now we got maybe a little bit. I'm gonna turn the pulsing down just a little. Okay, so just looking at the ronchogram here, it looks like we're already, in pretty decent position here, believe it or not. Um, so which is, promising. And then this can be now ideally you want to do this over, nothing, um, or something that's just amorphous. This can be a little tricky to do if you're seeing something crystalline. So, all right, let's switch to ATA1. Now for ATA1, you definitely want to be at bit 0 because this is really coarse. This is twofold astigmatism. Okay, so that's worse. Okay, so right about there, I think we're pretty close. Let me do AT B2 again. Come on. Oops. Yeah, we're burning a hole. That's okay. Stigmator. Okay. Right. All right. I think we're close enough here that we can give this to SCORR now. So turn this off. All right. So let's put the C2 aperture back in. Okay, and now we need to make the camera length a lot shorter. So I like to use 91 here. It's going to tilt the beam 40 millirad when it does the tuning. So this ensures that we shouldn't get any clipping. We shouldn't, because if this disc gets on the HADF detector, we're going to end up doing that. So we don't want to do that, obviously. Okay. RA detector. I don't think it's in. Uh, okay, it's in now. Okay, so we can go ahead and find direct alignments again and align the disc. You can turn off it's not perfectly centered, but you can turn that off and click done. All right, so let's come back here to the Velox window. So now we need to make sure our detector contrast brightness is set reasonably well. So if we turn on the scope, okay, so this is not too bad. Can bring the offset down and the gain up, but we're still out of focus here. So now we're gonna fine tune the focus with the Z here. We'll see if we can't get this any better. We should be able to get it, again, if we had the piezo here, we could do this. But there we go. Yeah, we should be able to see atomic detail here. So Yeah, so that's good focus. Now we want to set the mag here at 225K. The reason for that is the Nyquist frequency. Okay, so if we come back here, yeah, 225K and microscope control. Okay, as you change the field of view, you want to be careful that we're not clipping anything. So it looks like we're still okay based on the histogram, based on um, the scope here, but we can bring this down maybe a little more. Sometimes that can change depending on the focus. All right, but that looks good. So we'll stop it, go to SCORR, click on measurements, C1A1, and over here on this right panel, I like to actually give it the info here. So probe state is 250 picoamps. Click options here. This is where you give it the semi-angle. Okay, yeah, so I'm sorry, I didn't give you the skinny about the angle here. So let's see, do we want to do this here? Let me put this in and let me start scanning. Okay, so measuring the angle here, we can do this directly in Velox because we have the camera length calibrated. So if we want to do that, we want to make this disc a lot bigger. It's going to make it easier to measure. So I'm going to bump this up quite a bit until we're just, yeah, so right about there is enough due to fraction alignment. I'm not going to worry about my brightness contrast right now. I know it's going to, yeah, look out of sorts, but that's okay. Detectors, click SATA, and it's inserting SATA. Okay, and then we can click start. And then we need to pull the screen out of the way. Okay, so there is our disk, and I think we need to change the readout area. Okay, so it's only reading a quarter. So let's change this to half. Okay, so now we're actually seeing this. All right, so we need to measure the radius here. Okay. Object properties, 10.14 reciprocal nanometers. Okay. All right, so we want to figure out what this is in terms of the alpha value, okay? This is the radius of this disk. We multiply this by the wavelength, we should get that answer, okay? So if we come over here, let's clear this. So we get 10.14 times 0.00251. That's the wavelength in nanometers. And we get 25.45, okay? So it's a little bit bigger than normal, but it's very close. Okay, so I mean, we could nominally put in 25. It's it's reasonable to do that here. Let's see if we zoom in here. Want to see, are we maybe overshooting it a little? I don't think so. I think it's reasonable here, and and of course there's some interpretation with how you measure this, right? So so that's, yeah, it's still basically the same number here. See, that's 10. That would be if it was exactly 25. So it's very close to that. Yeah, you're talking about a very slight discrepancy. So, okay. So anyways, if we want to place it just at the edge here. Okay, so 10.10. So 10.10 times 0.00251. All right, so we'll put in 25.4. Okay. All right, let me put the screen in. And let me find this. Let's put 25.4. Let me. There we go. Okay, 25.4. Yeah, our current is about 250 picoamps. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit less than that. Again, we want to do this in vacuum if we want to actually measure the current. Like if we're actually, or we want to be over something that's weakly scattering. So if we put the probe here, that should be reasonable. Yeah, so it's 240 picoamps basically. I wouldn't put it on the gold because that's not going to give you an accurate number, but let's put 240 there. Okay, and now we can set this to auto update, which I like to do while it's tuning. The other way you can measure this, and I don't like doing this because you have to make a big change to your condenser system, but you can drive C3 until you focus the direct disk to a point, and then you end up with a parallel beam and you see the ring pattern, and then you can use the ring to calibrate it, okay? So you measure the radius of this. Right, you measure the radius of this here. Okay, and then you measure the radius of the ring. You have to know what the angle is for that ring, and then based on that, you can determine what this is, right? Because it scales linearly. So this is not accurate in terms of what's on here. This is not, accurate. But yeah, that's how you would end up calibrating it based on just the diffraction pattern from the gold palladium. Okay, it's very similar to what I did in the condenser align video. Okay, so but I'm not going to do that here because I don't want to do a massive change to my condenser optics here. So, all right, but we verified the angle. I'm going to put this back to 91. Let me start the scan again. Okay, and so my detector contrast and brightness should still be fine because I didn't modify it when I changed camera lengths. And it is. Let me recenter this a little bit better. Okay, so we're good to go here. All right, so now we can give this to SCORR. Okay. All right, so let's center the beam, stop, and we'll go to SCORR, and we want to do C1A1. I like to put 1 second in here for the time. I think that just gives a more stable measurement. Okay, so what's it telling us here, right? So it's deconvoluting the probe shape versus in 3 focal states: Gaussian, under focus, and over focus. Okay. Ideally, these should be the same, under and over. That's what we're kind of shooting for here. Okay. So now what we're doing here is we need to get all these values here for these aberrations. We need to minimize these. Okay. So WD is beam tilt. Okay. Generally speaking, the lower the order of the aberration, the higher the percentage you can tell it to correct for. Okay, so like WD, C1A1, those can be corrected at 100%. So we're going to start by correcting WD. So we have 100%. So we're going to click WD, and we should see this number go down. Okay, and we do. So ideally, we want these in the white here. Okay, so now we've got C1, which is defocus, A1, which is twofold astigmatism, and A2, which is threefold astigmatism. So we can correct C1, and you can see what's happening with the probe shape. So what it's telling us here, it's telling us what's limiting our probe shape. So now it's telling us twofold astigmatism is the problem, okay? Okay, there's A1, and now it's telling us A2 is the problem. So now with A2, I'm not going to do that at 100%. Can try it at 50 and see how that works. Okay, so you can see we're getting better here. We're still limited by A2. What we're trying to get here is this optimum value to be equal to what it's measuring, okay? So we're not quite there yet. There's A1, there's C1. Yeah, so sometimes it'll do this where it'll overshoot the C1. That's okay. It'll catch back up in a second there. It only does that with C1 for some reason. If you're getting like lines that are all gray, then something is out of whack with your measurement. All right, so A2 is still kind of in the yellow, so we're going to keep working on that here. Okay, so that's better. Okay, so we're really close now. You can see this number is basically the same, okay? And it's going to give us some fluctuation here, unfortunately. But it looks pretty close here. These numbers are all low and in the white. So at this point, I think we're probably basically ready to, yeah, do a tuning with the Tableau. So we're going to stop and we're going to do a Tableau. Okay, so you want to use 40 is the recommended angle. Okay, you should be able to get to 40 if everything is working properly. You need to tilt to these high angles because that's how you see the higher order aberrations. Okay, you can just leave this on standard. Again, use 1 second exposure, and we're going to go ahead and click start. Okay. So what it's doing here, and you can see this here, is in the Ronchigram. So it's tilting about some, and then it's changing the azimuthal angle, and then it's tilting, right? So then it's tilting this way, and then it's going to tilt this way. Yeah, like that. Okay, so what it's doing is it's tilting, it's over focusing, it's under focusing, and it's measuring the probe shape in both of those conditions. So ideally what we're going to get is we want the probe shape to be the same for over focus and under focus for all of these different azimuthal angles, okay? That's ideally what we're looking for. All right, so now it's going to do like that. That's now tilting 20 millirad only. Okay, moment of truth. What do we got? Okay, so here's what we got. So it's telling us that we're good to constant phase to 18 millirad, and our limiting aberration is A2, which is threefold astigmatism, condenser astigmatism, okay? So basically everything over here that's in yellow is of potential concern, okay? So let's go ahead, we'll click, well, let's create a restore point. So right here, set a new, well, actually we'll accept first, and then we'll create a new undo point right here. So then if we need to undo something, we can. So now we have to decide which of these aberrations we're going to tell SCORR to address. So generally speaking, you don't want to mess with anything higher than third order, okay? So everything that's fourth order and fifth order, you want to leave alone, okay? Those you only want to leave those to the service people. Generally speaking, the higher the order the aberration, the more stable it is over time. And then the lower the order, the less stable it is over time. It's one of the reasons why you're constantly having to fix two-fold astigmatism when you're imaging, right? Like every few minutes, you're going to have to possibly tweak that, okay? Um, so looking at this, we've got a lot of C3, a lot of A3, and which is fourfold astigmatism, and S3 as well, which is axial star. So what are we going to do then? So we can tell this. So we don't want to do too much of this at once. Let's start by just correcting C3 here. So we're going to tell it again, we don't want to do a lot of this. We'll do 50%. So if we go to state of correction, we'll do 50% and we'll just tell it C3, okay? All right, so now we're going to come back here and we can take a look at the probe. So one thing that's going to happen is that, and I'll show you this anyway. I'll turn diffraction off here so you can see it. So one of the things that happens as you correct WD, like you can see this isn't centered anymore, okay? This is actually normal behavior as was explained to me by the service, one of the apps people. So we could move this back, but it's kind of a exercise in futility because SCORR is just going to correct it back anyway. So I'm not going to worry about that, okay? So really after that initial correction, we don't really need to look at the probe anymore. Okay, we can basically just rely on the Röntgengram. So we'll turn diffraction back on. Okay, we'll put our camera length back up to 230 or whatever we'd like to use. Okay, direct alignments, make sure we have our disc centered here. Find apertures, put in the 150. Okay, and so let's move to another spot here. So, I mean, just looking at it, it looks good. I mean, we can do, let me go ahead and push you center. Well, our defocus is not that, it's not that large, so I'm just going to leave it alone. Let's check. So we can do the same thing here. I mean, it looks like we might have a little bit of B2 here. Okay, I already have it selected even. All right, I think that might have made it worse. And again, this can be kind of tricky to do over when you're seeing crystalline material here, unfortunately. We just have to get this in the ballpark. SCORR is going to, take it from there. Yeah, so that's worse. And I'm adjusting the up down thing. Okay, that looks okay for now. Let me stop that. Okay, we'll put in the 70 again. Let's start our acquisition here. Oh,
bumped the camera length up. Okay, so let's put this back to 91. Okay, we'll turn off the screen marks. There we go. Okay. Now if we mag in, see, I never understood this, right? Like we had the image focused, but yet when we were actually like, it seems like SCORR actually is going to defocus this. So, clearly, right, this is not focused, at least like at the atomic level. Okay, that's pretty close. Yeah, so we can start to see atomic detail right there. Again, if I had the piezo stage, I would dial this in more, but I don't. It's not working right now, so I'm just going to leave it here. Okay, again, make sure we're not clipping. Histogram says we're good. And my scope also says we're still good. Okay, all right. Do you need to stop this before you run SCORR or else it will bark at you? Here, just so you don't believe me, or so you know I'm not lying. Okay. Okay, so it's giving you okay, problem, right? So easy fix. Just stop what you're doing in Velox and then start it. Okay, and then it'll work fine. Okay, so the goal here is, excuse me, the goal here is we've got to get this phase plate to look better. Okay, so we need this phase plate, and particularly this green area, we need this bigger. Okay, ideally by about 7 or 8 millirads at least. That's the constant phase area of the phase plate, and that's basically telling you how big you can make your convergence angle and basically have an aberration-free probe. Okay, so right now we're only out to 18 millirad. Now that's still pretty high. So actually at 20 millirad, believe it or not, we can get 80 picometer probe. Okay, but we always like to have it tuned out higher than that if possible. Okay, all right. So again, we're going to correct WD. Okay, so that's good. And then our little probe shape guy here is telling us we're limited by, now we're limited by A1, and then now C1. Not by much. Okay, so it's only, yeah, like 3 nanometers here. Okay, so now we're limited by B2. B2 I'm going to do at 50% because that's second order. Okay, so now it's telling us we're limited by S3, which we cannot correct from this. So actually, hold on really quickly here. I'm going to pull something up on my phone. It is related to this, believe it or not. I'm not watching cat videos. Okay, so S3 is that's third order axial star. But that's actually the way you can actually think of that, and I think this makes more sense, is it's third order twofold astigmatism. Okay. That's actually what S3 is. It's called third order axial star, but it's actually third order twofold astigmatism. So A1, right, that is first order twofold astigmatism. Okay. There's also a fifth order axial star as well. Okay. Which would be, again, fifth order twofold astigmatism. Okay. So, just another thing to kind of wrap your brain around, right, is your different folds of astigmatism have different orders of correction to, or different orders of aberration contribution, if you will, right? Just like A2, right? So A2 is threefold, is second order threefold astigmatism, okay? You also have D4, okay? So D4 is fourth order threefold astigmatism. That's what they call lobe astigmatism. Actually, I'll show you this in the tableau so you can see it. That's what this is right here, okay? At some point, I'm going to do a deep dive video into what all these mean because I think this would be helpful to do. There's a lot of good literature out there on this and actually some very helpful websites. The Joel website is very helpful in discussing all these actually. So, and we're not using a Joel microscope, so I hope they're not too mad at me right now. But anyways, let me come back here. All right. So we got a little sidetracked there, although it made sense. So where are we at here? So everything's looking reasonable. We can correct B2 maybe a little more. Okay, so yes, it's telling us we're limited by third order axial star here. So, all right, so we're gonna stop. Okay, all right, and we'll do a tableau. All right, again, that's the same thing as third order twofold astigmatism. That's another way you could think of it. So hopefully, if we are on the right track here, we should see a better phase plate result. All right, so we got some improvement. So we got 3 more millirad, and it's telling us we are limited by third order axial star now. Okay, so we got an improvement. So that's good, right? So that's what we want to see is we want to see ideally, every tuning iteration we're getting better. Okay, so we're gonna accept, and we're gonna create another restore point here. Okay, and now we have to decide what we're going to tune here or correct. So because it's telling us we're limited by S3, let's do 50% of S3. So we already 50% and we'll click S3, okay? All right, and once again, I'm not even going to bother looking at the probe image. We can take a quick look at the ronchogram, but if we may be okay just leaving that alone at this point, because like if we look back here, sorry, if we look back here at the measurements, right, B2, A1, C1, like these are all low, okay? So that, I mean, we don't probably need to do anything with these, in terms of the ronchogram, okay? So just based on this, we really can just start with C1A1 again, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. All right, limited by A1. Still limited by A1. Okay, now we're limited by S3. Let's correct C1. Oh, that's already very low. It's, 2 nanometers or less. And we're like 6 picometer discrepancy here. So very, very small. Yeah, so it's still saying we're limited by S3. So we probably picked the right aberration to correct. It's just a question of if we corrected enough of it. We might need to do another iteration. I mean, you do as many iterations until you're satisfied with the result, right? Okay, that's A1. Let's say 1 again, see if that goes away. All right, I think we're probably good to stop here. Oh, I stopped it. Okay, didn't realize that. All right. I thought I was holding stop. I was looking for another measurement. So, all right, here we go. Do another Tableau. So the choice of the mag, when you do this is critical. You have to set that at 225K. And that's of course with 512 pixel resolution. That gives you the correct Nyquist frequency for doing the tuning. Okay. So that is important. That you have that when you're doing this. Now, if you're getting like nonsensical like if I guess this probably the easiest way to describe this, if these look like shotgun blasts, which I've seen this happen. All right, what are we gonna get here? Fingers crossed. Ooh, all right. We got 2 more millirad. All right, so we're getting there. Okay, so it's telling us now C3 is still a little high and threefold astigmatism. Okay, so we're getting close. All right, so let me click accept. Let me set a new undo point. Okay, let me blank the beam here. Uh, happened here. Okay. Okay. So I mentioned right when we were looking at the image of the probe and I was tilting the beam and the spot wasn't moving. Like that is critical when you're doing this. Okay. You have to have tilt purity with this. And unfortunately, you don't have any way to directly fix that. That's done at the service level, right? They are the ones that specify the objective lens and they verify that those pivot points are as necessary. But if your beam is shifting around when you're tilting, what you're probably going to see here is, for lack of a better term, instead of seeing these nice, distinct white spots, you're going to see something that kind of looks uh like a shotgun blast, okay? And it doesn't make any sense. The reason for that is, right, you don't have tilt purity, okay? So the beam, when it's tilting this 40 millirad, it's seeing something completely different than it was when it wasn't tilted, okay? And so that's why that will be a problem, okay? We're not seeing that here, which is good, right? We're seeing a nice, distinct circle here. Now we do see some variation in the shape, which is, because we're still working on the tuning here. Like you can see azimuthally as I go around here, this is not perfectly symmetric. And we're going to see if we can improve that, right? But the goal again is just we want to get this bigger, right? I want to see if we can get this to 25 millirad or higher, okay? Um, but yes, so that's what's going to happen if you don't have tilt purity, is you're going to end up seeing spots here that kind of look like shotgun blasts. And it's going to be the same thing here in C1A1, right? You're going to see the same thing here in the under and over focus deconvoluted images, okay? You're also going to see these measurements. They're going to all be just like dark gray, I believe. It's going to say like this is nonsensical and it makes no sense. Um, so yeah, so this, again, you don't have control over that, but I mean, if you think something weird is going on, please bring it up to your service technician. I mean, I'm guessing if you have a probe corrector, you probably have a service contract, so you know, be be sure to make use of it if you think something is a little out of sorts, okay? Um, and yes, if somebody is barking back at you about like the tilt purity not being necessary, you need to talk to someone else, okay? Because that is absolutely critical, okay, to have that, okay? Um, so and, unfortunately, I've seen some discrepancies, or I shouldn't say that. I've seen some inconsistencies with the service people, where some of them are like, "Oh yes, that's important," and other ones are like, "Tilt purity. I mean, you don't need that for the tuning, right?" But it's like, well, no, you do. Okay, so yeah, my having done this now for 4 years, yeah, I can say very assuredly that you do need that. Okay. All right. So anyways, we got to improve result. And so what are we going to do now? Let's correct half of C3. Okay. We're not going to do anything to A2. So we're going to just correct half of C3. So we'll go to state of correction, 50% C3. Okay. And again, because C1, A1, B2 we're all good. I'm not even gonna bother checking out the Ronchigram. We're just gonna go straight to C1A1. Okay, here's what I was talking about. This is the shotgun blast, okay? You know why there's a shotgun blast? Because I don't have the beam on. I have the beam blanked. Okay, here we go. But yeah, this is what I was talking about, okay? If you're seeing something like this, this is how you know something is really out of whack, okay? If you're seeing something like that. Okay, so there we go. Now we're seeing like these are dark gray. So actually I'm glad I did that because then I could actually show you this, okay? All right, so it's telling us, right, so our C1 is less than a nanometer. Um, our A1 is also very, very small as well. That is also less than a nanometer. So it looks like A2 is still the culprit here. So see if we can't bring that down a little. Well, you see it's fluctuating a little bit here. I mean, this is good right now. A2 you can correct when you do stem auto tuning through Sherpa. So even if we don't dial it in perfectly here, that's something that like during a stem session you can directly adjust, albeit, through Sherpa, right? Which is automated. So I mean, this looks good. We're 2 picometers off here. I mean, all of these are nice and low. So um, Yeah, again, it does that sometimes when you do C1 for some reason. All right, I think we're good here. We'll stop this. And we'll run another Tableau. And hopefully we see that phase plate push out just a little bit more. Okay, so we took a little bit of a hit, but we have a much better looking plate. So ideally, what we want is we want something with kind of six-fold symmetry here, right? So we kind of see like these arms here, and then we don't kind of see them over here. So even though we took a hit with terms of the green area, I think we're still on the right track here, okay? Let's go ahead and click accept. Set another restore point. All right, so it's still telling us we're limited by S or by A2. Um, our A3 and S4, or sorry, S3 are still high. All right, we can correct a little more of the S3 here. So right. I mean, these are all very low at this point. And there the C1 explodes. All right, I think we're good to go here. All right, let me stop. All right, we'll run another Tableau. Check my, okay, that's reasonably centered. Ooh, okay. So we gain 2 millirad. All right, so we're at 24 millirad. So, and basically the only aberration past third or up to third order that's still giving us a problem is A2. So realistically, if we wanted to, we could probably stop here. Because all we have to do is it's telling us we're limited by A2 here. So I mean, we can tell it, we could go state of correction. We'll do 50% A2. We'll run another iteration here since we're already here. Okay, I mean, these are all very low. So correct A1. Okay, let's stop it. Run another Tableau. And hopefully we can get that. I'd really like to get that to 25 millirad at least before calling it a day here. That would let me sleep at night. Okay, let's see what we got here. Hey, ka-ching. All right, we are good to go. So we are tuned out to 26 millirad. Again, our initial tuning was only good to 18 millirad and we got all the way out to 26. So perfect. Okay. Yeah, so this is good. All the third order aberrations are low here, especially C3. That's the big one. We want that one to be in the white. So these other ones, really not a concern. Because we deal with these directly when we're setting up the stem anyway. So, and again, these fourth order ones really not a concern either. They're not limiting us here in terms of the phase plate. So, okay. So I'm going to click accept. All right. And I'll click a restore point. And now I'm going to go find my alignment file and save it. So if you saw my short video or relatively short video on the alignment files, you saw that 40% of that file is the probe corrector alignment. Okay. So that all gets buried in here, what we just did in SCORR. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take, well, actually, I'm going to do a couple things. So actually, I'm going to uncheck auto update because if I don't, then it's going to cause some problems when people actually go to do stem imaging. So you want to make sure that you only do this when you're actually using SCORR to do the tuning, okay? So if you're not, just turn it off. But I like to take a screenshot of this here, of the tuning result, okay? So we actually have this itself, okay? So come over here, new snip. Okay. And then I have, yeah, so I have these snips here for different tunings. So I'm gonna put here 0820. Okay. So actually, really quickly, let's actually go back and take a look at some of these so you can see. Let me blank the beam though. Did it work? Yep, beam is blanked. Okay. All right, let's take a look here. Yeah, so this is back in January of 2023, March of 2023. So that was a good result. Got all the way out to 28 millirad. This is 60 kilovolts. So at 60 kilovolts, what I found on this system is you can actually get out to much higher angles, actually well past 30 millirad when you do this tuning. That was a nice result at 200, where we actually got out to 31 millirad, 27 millirad. That's not relevant. This is June of 2023. That's August of 2023. And that's September. This is December. This is 300 kilovolts. This is October, 300 kilovolts. Okay. 200 kilovolts. This was 25 millirad, but we have a better shape here. This is closer to that six-fold shape that we try to shoot for. Let's see here. This is now in this year. So that only got it to 24 millirad. I think I stopped at that point because I was like banging my head against the wall. I couldn't get it any better than that. That was back in April. That got up to 27 millirad. And then this was the previous one to this one. That was 26. And then here's the one from today, which is 26 as well. Okay. So again, you want it generally higher than what you're actually going to use. Usually when we image or we do the stem, we like that around 22 to 23 millirad. Okay, so we're well within that green area of the phase plate. Okay, that's the important part here. So would we really get much benefit of making this out to like 30? Not really, if we were going to do imaging at that convergence angle anyhow. Okay, all right. So now that we have that also as part of the supervisor alignments playlist. Okay. I would also recommend at this point that if you haven't already, I would back up that alignments file. Okay. So I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this, but I mean, there's other stuff I could put in there as well, but I definitely wanted to do another video specifically talking about the probe corrector tuning. Okay. Again, if your system has an image corrector, you have another tuning you have to do for that, but this system does not have an image corrector. So, okay. Thanks everyone.